So, with the rise of all these YouTubers becoming like really big directors between Chris Stuckmann and the Philippa brothers and Kane Parsons, who's going to be doing the Backrooms movie, I just gotta say, guys, I'm right here. If you want me to film something, all you have to do is ask. Welcome back to Halloween in the Middle, everybody. Today our movie in the middle is Shelby Oaks. Shelby Oaks is the semi-found footage tale of the missing Riley Brennan and her sister Mia, who unravels a web of mysteries and perils to find her in the creepy titular town. It stars Camille, Sullivan, Sarah Durn, Robin Bartlett, Michael Beach, and Keith David. So now I am 2 for 2 for screen or scream unscenes in terms of trying to guess what they are and banking on the fact that I can maybe get a review out early for it. So that was pretty cool finding out that Shelby Oaks was in fact the movie that I was going to see on Monday. Shelby Oaks is, of course, directed by Chris Stuckmann, who is probably the most well-known movie critic on YouTube. He's been around since, I don't know, 2009, 11, something like that. Early into YouTube, so that's probably why he got the big platform that he did. For a while, he's wanted to switch out of not only just doing movie reviews, but actually wanting to make a movie himself, and this is now his directorial debut. Now, I watched Chris Stuckmann a lot for a long, long time, and my favorite parts, obviously, were the hilariocities. That was just like peak teen to college years of YouTube for me. Chris Stuckmann just happened to be in the audience. I saw him 3 rows ahead of me. And I was like, oh my god, I think that's Chris Stuckmann. And I turned to my mom and she was like, who's that? You don't, okay, I'm gonna go. So I got to talk to him for a couple minutes, obviously, told him how much I love the channel and the hilariocities, and I got an autograph, which was pretty cool. But of course, as of recently, a lot of people have been critiquing Chris Stuckmann's channel a little bit. He seems to have gotten a little bit less interested and doesn't sound as excited and, emphatic about whatever he's talking about on screen. I mean, that makes sense. He's focused on other things. He's focused on making the movies while also trying to keep up this channel. But the biggest form of critique that came out recently in the last, say, year or two was that he was not going to review anything negative on his channel. He wasn't going to give any negative bad reviews, which I had some thoughts on that, but honestly, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I'm here to talk about the movie. That's a whole other thing that maybe I can mention another time, but let's get into Shelby Oaks. So Shelby Oaks was, again, this very indie movie that had a Kickstarter. It's crazy to think that there was a Kickstarter for a movie that was also produced by Mike Flanagan. That's just crazy. And once again, because I always have to mention it, Mike Flanagan went to the school that I went to. So it is kind of cool seeing somebody who came out of, my university now is so big that he's producing the movie for a debut director from another film critic on YouTube. It's very cool. And a lot of people were really hyping this up, saying that this was basically the Blair Witch and Hereditary mixed together. And that is not only one high bar, but that's 2 high bars, which, if I'm doing the math right, makes it a very high bar. Starting off with the highs, the found footage section, I think, was incredibly enveloping. I mean, I think I don't want to say easy, but it's a really great place to start for somebody who wants to make films in general, but specifically horror films, to start with found footage. Not to say that it's easy by any means, but I think it allows for a little bit more leniency, more mistakes, and awkward things to happen, and a little bit more of guerrilla style of filmmaking. You can do it on the cheap. And, if there's any mistakes or anything that comes out of it, that can just be part of it, because it's supposed to look natural. And in the case of horror found footage, the shittier it looks at times, the scarier it can be. And while I do think that found footage in general does have an issue of not much happening until something really big happens, so it doesn't have a whole lot of rewatchability to most of them, I do really like that first experience of watching a found footage movie, especially when it takes this kind of angle and it's more of like a documentary for parts of it, which I'll get to in a second, but it's a lot like a documentary, and that is always very intriguing because there's this big event, something happened, this incident, and the whole town's involved, and you got people talking about it, this mystery, it really just grips you. And here, Chris Stuckmann does an excellent job of executing that. Just the way it was set up, the editing of it, the acting for all the people who are supposed to be giving very natural interviews, all of it was great. You can tell that he definitely was not doing an homage to, but was inspired by Lake Mungo. He did video on that a couple years ago, And that's how I heard about that movie, and then I ended up watching it. And he really loved the aspect that like all the interviews seemed very natural, you know, and it was just a very cool movie. You should check it out. And so I definitely saw some of that in here as well. But for the baseline, just like lowest bar, did it scare me? And I have to say yes, both in the jump scares and in the prolonged terror after I was done watching the movie. It is not the scariest thing I've ever seen in my life, but it did meet those requirements and then some. Even more impressive for the fact that he leans into a lot of horror tropes here. It is very interesting seeing a movie critic who, you know, is usually critiquing on things like, oh, cliched horror tropes and, you know, cliches in movies and stereotypes, making their own movie and using those same things. But at the end of the day, a lot of those have to be done anyway, you know, in order for a story to be made. And to be honest, he did them very well. They were effective. They added to the atmosphere and the vibe of the movie. It felt very in the moment, you know? It didn't just feel like, okay, I've seen this before, but like, good, you're just passable, you did a good job. The scenes were very creepy. They were right in the moment, scary, and the gore. You know, this movie didn't have as much gore early on, and the producers actually called for some reshoots to add a little bit more in there, which at first, just knowing basically the premise, or what I thought was the premise, I didn't think that was necessary, because when it comes to found footage, it's more about the suspense, the creepy elements, the supernatural elements. But with how the movie does turn out, I can say that I do understand where they were coming from, and it does add a little bit, because, you know, it doesn't overstay its welcome. There's little bits here and there, but it is effective. Camille Sullivan is awesome in this role. I cannot say that if my brother went missing, I don't know, that I'd be able to go to half these creepy-ass places and do all this digging to try to find him. Sorry, man. It was very cool because it kind of turned some found footage elements on their head, because imagine any found footage movie where you see like, oh, they must have died. But instead of being like, man, that's really sad, or only seeing that part, she goes, nah, screw that. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And goes out and tries to figure out what actually happened. That was really cool. And in that way, it's kind of like The Ring, too. So in that vein of me mentioning like 4 or 5 different horror movies at this point, and, you know, what he's kind of contributed with those in this movie, let's get to what is basically going to be the big middle. Probably the biggest thing debated about this movie, which is the blending of different subgenres of horror in this movie. Primarily, it is both a found footage / missing person documentary movie, but then it is also a supernatural, demonic horror subgenre. A lot of those found footage movies fall into that like demonic horror, supernatural possession sort of thing anyway, but obviously it's more within the entire found footage medium. This one is different because there's parts that are only found footage, and then there's parts that I'm just going to call normal movie, which basically just, it means it looks like a normal movie. It's shot like a regular movie. It doesn't look like it was filmed on a shitty camera. Some people are going to see it as 2 entirely separate things jammed together in one movie, and it's going to feel very jarring and very separated into basically 2 halves of the movie. Other people will probably think that this is like a masterful blending of the 2 mixed together in a very cohesive story. At the moment, I am shockingly in the middle about it.
I gotta admit it, I did not see this coming.
And I think definitely a second watch, now that I know everything that's coming and how this plays out, will definitely help me figure out where I land on it. As it stands, both sections are done very well, and they were both very effective. I already talked about the found footage section, but the normal movie parts and where this movie ends up going is terrifying. Like, it was very creepy, and the demonic stuff, for me, is some of the scariest of, like, horror subgenres. And for a while, it's been like, you know, ever since The Golden Child, Hereditary, you know, I haven't really been as scared here and there with a lot of those types of movies. And this is the first in a while where I was like, that was good. That was creepy. That was effective. I was pretty terrified by that for a bit. My only low, and to be honest, this also could just be a middle, because it's again, something I'm not quite sure how I feel about, but I'm going to put it as a low for now, only because my immediate reaction is, I think I don't like it as much. There's something about the movie its structure, I was a little perplexed by for a number of reasons. The problem is I cannot tell you what it is, or even remotely close to what it is, because I don't want to spoil that moment for you, or that thing that happens. I want to know your genuine reactions, because I did not expect it. But basically, I don't know how to feel about it. I think it was very effective in the moment, but I'm thinking for the overall story, does that work? That's really all I can say, unfortunately. So overall, this is an insanely good directorial debut from Chris Stuckmann. Even if after the second watch, I find that, yeah, it feels a little bit disjointed for me, I still think I really love a lot of what we got in here, and I loved watching it the first time. I feel like I'm really going to love watching it the second time to, like, kind of pick up on some more things. And again, even if it doesn't always work, I am here for doing something different, and I will always respect that and enjoy that, and I think he did a really great job. It's honestly, I wouldn't have expected it after watching his, like, Indiana Jones movies that he made years and years ago that he makes up fun of now. He's come a long way. It's really, really cool to see that. And again, just to show that YouTubers and, you know, people who, it's like, oh, they're not big-time directors. Well, you know what? Maybe they can be. They know what they're talking about, and it's just very cool to see that. I'm going to give Shelby Oaks a 3.5 out of 4. Well, guys, when you get to see it, let me know what you think of Shelby Oaks. I am very curious because it's a very polarizing movie, but I am so interested to see what you guys think and which side of the coin you really land on how it's structured in the movie as a whole. And as always, if you like this video, you can click right here and get Stuckmann. Wait, whoa, what the hell is happening? I just got possessed by the channel of Chris Stuckmann for a moment. Let's redo that. And as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and movies right in the middle. I'll see you guys later.